What's going on with Jasmy? Well, for one, I don't think it's popped off yet. Again, different side of the world and so on. But basically speaking, let's type in Jasmy. Boom. I guess it is starting to take off. So, 12% up. And I've always stated this before in the past. There it is highlighted for you guys. I'm going to come out of the frame for just a second just to put more emphasis on it. But basically speaking, I mean, it's up close to 12%. Might do some more things. But you guys got to keep in mind, for all the people like, well, Jasmy's not doing too well. You know what? It's a reflection of BTC and Ethereum. How do we know that? Well, let's go back for a second. When you see these starting to rip, BTC, Ethereum, your Jasmy also is going to rip because it runs in correlation with that. And we talked about this before. It's a real true thing. It doesn't matter if it's the 90-day chart, the 60, the 30, the 14-day, 7-day, 24-hour, 1 hour, whatever you want to call it. If these two are doing well, your Jasmy, about 90% of the time, is also doing well. But there's, of course, delays depending on that particular market. Now you see that market waking up. So that's cool. All right. So let's get into the news from the one and only Son. So Hara posted this January 6th, 2 days ago, about this particular interview. And I think it's a significant interview. I don't think it is a nothing burger. Jasmy is your thing. Please smash the like. Make sure you subscribe and so on. But check out what he says. Specifically, this interview published by Dime. No, not Time Magazine. Dime. The article is aimed at blockchain beginners. This is cool stuff. Listen to this for a second. It says it does not contain difficult points, but he would like to make the following 2 important points. And of course, I'll get into some of my other key takeaways about this as well, just to put it in like layman's terms. Not to say that Hara doesn't, but I also want to give you guys my own, key takeaway about it as well. We have been talking about for the longest time, Jasmy and Nccc. Look at this. They are preparing to build a fully digitally managed carbon credit trading system using its own blockchain tech for release next spring. Now, I'm hoping that, of course, he's referring to this coming spring, but you know how sometimes people refer to things. I would imagine it is. I mean, because if it was next spring, well, that would be like 2025, and my God, right? The distribution market for carbon credits could be a marketplace similar to the NFT distribution. And for all the naysayers who are saying this is nothing burger, you got to keep in mind this. How many times did we do research as a community here, talking about like, you guys always hear me joke about it, the Rice Crop Consortium. But the Rice Crop Consortium is actually a real thing. This whole thing that Jasmy's trying to do in regards to carbon credits and entering into that side of things is very, very significant. And you consistently see them do these types of things. And if anything, it's like, well, cool. You want to see their utility be in motion, but at the same time, you want to see Jasmy be part of the greater scheme of things of having something such as obviously the PDL, the personal data locker, and taking advantage of what I would refer to as a decentralized data marketplace. I've always been a big proponent of, they are a disruptor for the industries that need to be disrupted, which is GAFA, right? Google, Amazon, Facebook, and what's the other one? Apple, right? So those are centralized marketplaces. Well, enter in decentralized marketplace. Enter into the whole thing of teaming up with Nccc. So what exactly is this? Well, let's take you over to Dime. And over here, I'm going to get right into the good spots. So for one, this right here, and some of the ads might start popping up, which is really annoying. But it says, what are the uses of blockchain tech that can leverage Japan's strengths? This was, posted on the 7th, according to their time, as that they're about a day ahead. But I just went ahead and got further down, see how that pops up. I hate that, but anyway, takes a moment for that to go away. But anyway, yeah, it talks about Jasmy specifically. Where's the part that I wanted to get into? Yeah, here it is. Sorry about that. 2 main approaches. One, to prevent counterfeiting of finished products. The other is to be, certify that each component is a semiconductor product, not a counterfeit. That's good stuff too, but it's specifically that, excuse me, I'll chop this up a little bit better next time. Yeah, these 2 things. Carbon credits, as we know, is a system which companies can issue credits based on the greenhouse gas reduction, the effects generated through forest protection. Again, remember Yoshida? How he's always talking about dream forest? I mean, guys, come on. This is something that Jasmy, this has always been part of Jasmy and some of their bigger goals. But basically, yeah, tree planting, introduction of energy saving equipment, can trade between companies. But this part, real quick, about the whole thing of Jasmy, they're preparing, like it says, let's blow this up a little bit more, to build a fully digitally managed transaction system using proprietary blockchain technology with a view to release next spring. Again, that could be right around the corner. You know, we got to get more clarification on that. In order to support voluntary credits created by the National Capital Credit Consortium, which is the Nccc. There's this quote from Hagawara, which is this gentleman right here in the picture. Again, don't go to Dime. Oh my gosh, there's just so many pop-ups. But this is a good quote, and then I'll jump into some of the good stuff here in a second. He says basically that the issue, this is his quote, the issue with some current carbon credits is that the tracking of their status after issuance is unclear and not, or I should say, and the reliability of their effectiveness in reducing greenhouse gas emissions has been shaken. The traceability and durability of blockchain tech, by taking advantage of its tamperability, it has become possible to track the reduction effect after issuance and issue reliable carbon credits. There's also a possibility of building a carbon credit distribution market similar to the distribution of NFTs. Now, for some of you guys are like maybe thinking, well, what is so significant about it? And that's, of course, where good old Max comes through with some information. So I did more research about this basically, and I came to the conclusion that, basically speaking, while Jasmy itself is preparing to build a fully digitally, managed transaction system using proprietary, blockchain tech, basically speaking, with a view to release this hopefully this coming spring, right? Not like 2025, right? This coming spring, 2024. In order to support voluntary credits created by, of course, the Nccc, the significance of this, oh man, there's a lot of different things to get into. So for one, if you've been following this, it's going to allow for increased transparency, and of course efficiency. For one, if you know about like the traditional carbon credit market, they often suffer from issues like double counting. I believe it was Hedera that pointed some of this stuff out in the past. But yeah, double counting, fraud, lack of transparency. But with blockchain tech specifically, its inherent features basically are some of these things. And that is immutability, decentralization. And these considers creating secure and auditable records, basically, of just each carbon credit. You got to keep in mind, this combination of Jasmy with the Nccc, what they're trying to produce this coming spring, hopefully this spring, basically is going to create a sense of transparency, efficiency, trustworthiness for buyers, sellers, so on and so forth. I mean, even with the recent report from Macari, Japan embraces, Bitcoin, Macari, which is, some people call it like the flea market of Japan, if you will. I don't mean that disrespectfully. Some people have seen that and they said, oh, awesome. Finally embracing Bitcoin. Well, what about the Bitcoin of Japan? Hear me out. How about from the backdoor side of things? Because at the end of the day, data protection would be the backdoor side of things. So this is really, really significant because on top of all this, you have the whole thing of enhanced liquidity, accessibility. You're going to be able to create a digital marketplace or digital decentralized marketplace, if you will, for voluntary carbon credits. And Nccc and even Jasmy are going to improve liquidity and accessibility. At least that's their aim. This could attract, of course, as we know, new participants in this particular space, both buyers, sellers, and ultimately expand the carbon credit market, leading to greater environmental impact. That statement of expanding the whole carbon credit market and have Jasmy at the forefront, that right there is something I'm really, really glad that they're trying to embrace. Don't get me wrong. I mean, going into finance democracy is one thing, but understanding what their utility that they already have with the PDL, this allows mass adoption. And we're going to get more into that here in a bit. Um, it's going to empower, for instance, local communities, hence the term and why I mentioned the Rice Crop Consortium all the time, because there's farming communities and there's all sorts of different other larger and smaller to mid-scale communities out there, especially ironically in Southeast Asia and Japan. So this project specifically does focus on revitalizing local Japanese communities by facilitating the creation and trading of carbon credits from abandoned farmland and also forests. And of course, some of this was hinted at in the past. Now with the Nccc, you start to see this coming to fruition. I think this is a big major win for Jasmy, and for it to be featured in that local publication in Japan with Dime. Hey, that's more of that mainstream mention that some people have been complaining about. You don't see it on a broader scale over here in the United States, but for that to be mentioned in Japan, that's awesome. Now, listen to this for a second. This specifically could provide much needed financial resources and incentives, of course, for local communities to manage just that, their natural resources, sustainably speaking, while contributing to global carbon reduction efforts, not just the whole thing of what's going on in Japan. Now, there's a lot about this whole thing of this innovative technology for, the bigger scheme of things with Jasmy. The use of Jasmy's unique blockchain tech in this project with the Nccc is significant for more than just the reasons I just mentioned. For one, the company claims its platform offers functionalities like data anonymization, not just democratization, and selective disclosure. When I looked more into this on my research, I also came to the conclusion that this is also going to address, listen to this, privacy concerns, because at the end of the day, isn't that what Jasmy is all about? And the relation to carbon credit generation and, of course, trading. Additionally, the project could pave the way for further innovation applying blockchain tech, and here's the real kicker, to environmentally sustainable initiatives. Now, of course, there's other factors because this is at its early stages, and always good to point out maybe some of the realistic possibilities, right? It's not just raw Jasmy. We understand we need a regulatory landscape. I think we're going to get there soon, especially with Japan leading the charge with the whole thing of data free flow with trust, DFFT. It definitely helps you have Taro Kono leading that charge. But when we talk about market adoption, I think that's why we're all here tonight, to learn more about the greater piece of the puzzle, right? The bigger picture. In order to achieve market adoption, basically speaking, we need to attract, as in the Jasmy army, sufficient number of buyers and sellers to the platform, because at the end of the day, it's very, very essential for maintaining liquidity and generating value. We need more liquidity. What project doesn't? I mean, you could be the biggest project out there, right? Ripple's way up there, obviously, in the top 5. They always need more liquidity. So does Jasmy. There is technological challenges to this. I got to be real. And basically speaking, that ensuring the security and scalability of the blockchain platform is necessary for long-term sustainability. Now, for the naysayers, they're like, oh, great. Are you kidding me? What have we been doing lately with Jasmy? Have we not stuck to the white paper? Are we not upgrading to this new layer 2 solution with Optimism? Are we not upgrading to a sufficient Web3 cloud storage solution with Polkadot? Yes, we are. So there's that. Overall, when it comes to this whole thing of Jasmy and Nccc, keep in mind this. The collaboration represents a potentially transformative step towards a more efficient, transparent, carbon credit market, or decentralized carbon credit market. Now, its success for both could not only contribute to achieving global climate goals, but empower the local governments or communities of Japan and that region of the world and drive innovation in the specific tech. But your key takeaway for the, to conclude the whole Jasmy coverage of the night before we get into the next thing. Actually, it might not be too conclusive yet. It's not. Sorry. Your key takeaway should be that this is, in fact, a step towards for a more efficient carbon credit market, but at the same time, it's that utility finally being used. Everybody is saying to me, Max, when do we finally start seeing the utility being used? I think this is the first significant milestone because now you have a legitimate company, as in the Nccc, already saying to the world, especially in that publication from Dime, you know what? We didn't choose XYZ, whatever it is, project. No, we picked Jasmy, the Bitcoin in Japan, if you will. Why? Because we understand the personal data locker. We understand how their focus for a decentralized data marketplace through the PDL makes simple sense. And when you apply it towards the likes of agriculture or even what they're good, doing with Society 5.0, you're hitting both major sectors. You're not just saying, hey, it's only the big cities. They have branched out to, for instance, the farmlands and so on. That's utility in motion all the way. I think this is a big win for Jasmy. Obviously, we'll talk more about it. And in conclusion, I also want to point out these, I think I wrote down 5 things. Yes, 5 things. Because we're talking about those NFTs real quick. I know this is a lot to cover, but this is really good if you follow Jasmy. Pay attention to this. You'll be glad that you did. There's a lot of financial potential with this. We're talking about a lot of money. So these democratized access, because obviously Jasmy is data democratization, right? You hear that all the time. Like NFTs, carbon credits could become more accessible to individual investors, creating wider market with larger potential value. We talked about liquidity earlier. I'm not going to get into that. But at this point, I want to drive home before we do finally conclude this. And that is new revenue streams. How does that sound for size when it comes to Jasmy? Listen to this. Carbon credit devs and their projects could benefit from the fractional ownership models and ongoing royalties linked to credit usage. When we talk about, for instance, this is not the BSV segment, we talk about like when, Satoshi Nakamoto is confirmed to be Craig Wright. Can you imagine the influx of royalties, right? Well, this is Jasmy we're talking about. So to have all these fractional ownership models and ongoing royalties linked to the credit usage and combine that with the personal data locker, I think you can come to the conclusion that you don't need me to put in layman's terms 24/7 to understand the huge potential of that. Combine that with thousands, not just thousands, but millions of people worldwide. When this thing gets more and more adoption, it's a no-brainer that if you're not accumulating more Jasmy, again, not financial advice, but this is what I'm doing, you're not understanding the bigger picture. No offense. 2 more things I want to get into. What about premium pricing? Uniquely impactful or scarce credits, if you will. Similar to rare NFTs, you guys have bought some, even with the Shiba Inus of the world. Remember the Shiboshis, right? Remember not even with Shiba Inu, I think it was Shiba Doge, right? I know we're talking about memes, but just hear me out. There's some rare NFTs, right? The more rare the NFTs, especially that one, I think it was like the Elon Musk 101 NFT. That's a really rare one, right? But combine that with something with like Jasmy with the Nccc. Listen to this. Uniquely impactful or scarce credits similar to rare NFTs could command higher prices. Yeah, you heard me right. Boosting overall market value. That is something else. Last but not least, transparency and trust. As we know, blockchain's inherent traceability, especially with what Jasmy's trying to do with the layer 2, could enhance trust and transparency. We talked about this earlier. So lots of significance about this. Tokenized carbon credits, emission reductions, direct funding of projects. Have we not seen that already with what the Jasmy grants is basically doing? The promotion of transparency and accountability. But, to close it out, I know it says earlier, this is the juiciest of the juicy. It's the potential value. I try not to do this so much because then people come back at me and they say, well, this didn't happen. This is just what I personally feel like could happen. We do have some data that we shared in the past, but listen to this for a second. because this has to do with the whole bigger concept of the carbon credits and so on. And then we'll get into the next subject here in a second. As we know, it's hard to estimate this. I'm not a fortune teller, but I want you to understand the bigger picture. Global carbon credits, or the global carbon market, I should say. You can look this up for yourself. I know a lot of you guys will. It is anticipated, to reach 2.4 trillion. That's just that market alone by 2027, suggesting sizable potential. Again, Jasmy at the forefront. Say what you want, even when we talk about our blue chips, because I know someday, we feel as though Jasmy would be part of the blue chips and part of the top 50 and so on, or top 25. But the current blue chips, every time I hear carbon credits and all that stuff, I think of Hedera immediately. So to have Jasmy even trying to do this at the forefront in Japan, Southeast Asia, and you're looking at the prices, and some people are still flooding the prices about Jasmy at 0.005 in a number. Oh my gosh. I mean, you want to talk about being able to buy a lot for not much and seeing some things happen. I've already seen some things happen. I've seen my portfolio blow up, even with Jasmy, even with all the FUD. But the point is 2.47 potentially by 2027. How about this for more potential? Individual NFTs have sold, of course, as we know, especially these rare ones, for millions of dollars, showcasing the possibility of high value carbon credits. Number 3, Task Force on Scaling Voluntary Carbon Markets estimates the voluntary market alone could be worth 50 billion by 2030. And that's just with that in itself. That's just like a small part of it. I'm not going to talk you guys' ears off about this anymore. My thing is this. When you look more into Jasmy, you do more of your own research, the saying goes, understand the greater potential when it comes to the Vita laptops and the, this whole thing of VIO and, oh my gosh, the whole thing of carbon credits, finance democracy, personal data management, you name it. Don't let anybody talk you out of what you have and why you hold it. I still will talk about Jasmy all the time. Why? Because I understand the greater potential of things, and especially at the prices that it's at. My goodness.